Good morning and welcome to this introduction, one-day introduction to Tibetan language and all related matters, let's say, to Tibetan language. We will try to have a, like say, an initial introduction for those who have no previous have not had any previous contact with the language itself, with the Tibetan language world, let's say. And then also according to your needs and your wishes, and if that said, it is always welcome that you have questions, you may ask them. If you're here, it's easier, obviously. If you're online, you can either write in the chat, you can raise your hand and speak directly, or signal that you would like to ask a question in one way or another. So let's have a look at the basics, let's say. What is Tibetan language and what kinds of, let's say, categories we can put it in, so that you have an idea of what's going on linguistically in the Himalayas. My specific competence, maybe, and the part of Tibetan language that I am teaching and translating from is the so-called Dharma language, meaning a language that, as we see later, has been specifically, let's say, specialized or formulated in order to be able to sort of receive, like a vase, all the content of the Sanskrit language that was at that time the main vehicle for the spreading of the Buddha Dharma. So they kind of set up, invented, and created a technical jargon, a technical language that would be able to go into the depth of the Sanskrit original ideas, doctrines, practices, and so on and so forth. And there has always been a very close relationship from a certain point of view between Sanskrit and Tibetan. We will go into more detail that. Nevertheless, obviously, the Tibetan Dharma language, which I will call Chökhe, Chökhe means actually the language of Dharma, and that is how Tibetans generally call this specific register of language. This Chökhe is not a different language. It is not, maybe there is some movement here, so. Yeah, yes. It is not at all, Dharma language is not at all a, let's say, different language or a new language, no? You know that in human history, it never happened that a language was created before it was spoken, no? Languages are a natural production of human mind, probably. So that language originally existed, no? If you like, the Dharma language is a picture, a photography of the state of the language, the spoken language, the common language, at that time when it was like kind of codified, which is, let's say, in the during the last centuries of the previous millennium, or let's say the first millennium. The language was already there. It was very rich. It was already in a good position to represent the depth of the spiritual, understandings and insights of, let's say, the Asian world. Tibet was not that isolated at that time, and most probably there were like many trade routes and contacts, both with the Indian world, particularly in the east, like in the area of Lhasa, Tawang, Bhutan, Arunachal Pradesh, these eastern parts of India, but also in the West Tibet, where famously the Mount Kailash is. No? And the Mount Kailash is a mountain that is extremely sacred for a number of different traditions. No? The Hindu in particular, the Burmpos, the Buddhist, and everyone would go, maybe even the Taoist in ancient times. No? The Himalayas have always attracted pilgrims from all over the place. So, of course, at that mountain, many people would meet to circumambulate the mountain itself and exchange ideas and exchange and like have contact that is recognize similar views, similar, let's say, even practices that they maybe could share, no? And exchange and not mix, but confront maybe. I think that Kailash area was a extremely important hub for the spiritual life of Asia. That would be really interesting to research more if there are some records of that, but probably many, documents and things that might have ensued at that time are probably lost. So nothing really factual can be said about that. But in any case, what we know is that Tibetan was a language that was already extremely developed, particularly in the field of the spiritual path. The Burmpo, although nowadays the Burmpo is the pre-Buddhist tradition, so-called, although it is not really nice to formulate something just in relation to something else. No? So when the Buddhists came, Burmpo also came into existence, so to say. Rather, the Burn tradition, about which we do not really know very much these days, because it has undergone dramatic changes with the influx of Buddhism in the Himalayas. And from a certain point of view, it has become a sort of replica of the Buddhist world, of the Buddhist structure. But while at the same time contributing a lot of cultural input into Buddhism itself. That is what, in fact, produced Tibetan Buddhism as we know it along history and to this day. So language was developed, it was important. It is said from the Buddhist tradition, if you read the Buddhist accounts of history of Dharma in Tibet, it seems that like before Buddhists came, Tibet was like populated by monkeys or something. People without any culture, without any sophistication, without any background. And which is obviously, let's say, a not really faithful historiographical account, of course. It's just, to highlight and to make more important the contribution of Buddhism and the impact it had, the civilizing impact it had on the Himalayan region. So probably there were forms of writing before in Tibet, but writing was mostly used for secular, let's call them purposes, no? It is not a general praxis in South Asia and in the Himalayas as well, or it was not, to write things down, to write stories, to write myth, to write the, let's say, cultural tradition down, teachings. No, for example, when the Buddha taught, which is wherever 2,500 years ago, maybe, doesn't make much difference. Few centuries more, few centuries less. You know, he taught. He never wrote anything down. No. It is only a few centuries later that texts about the Buddha's teaching came up. No. And generally, that happened also with the tradition, with the Hindu tradition. No, there was not a praxis of writing things down. Why? Because people could keep things in mind, and there was an ability, a training in memory that was very efficient and was considered to be reliable. And it was also if the content, the container for this tradition is a living being, it is kind of more enlivened, no? More alive. If you put it on writing, it is kind of, it becomes sterilized, dead, if you like. So writing in that context was first only used for things that could not be open for debate, let's say. For example, the king orders this and that. No, if you write it down and you maybe seal with the king's seal, that is clear. The king said it. You can. There is no doubt that it's like that. Treatises, no, when you have two parties coming together and formulating something, no, an agreement or something, and they write it down because so there is no dispute later. Or I sell you this, no, and we agree, we write it down. So that was the purpose of writing in early times. Then later on, maybe for whatever reason, scripture, and that is as a consequence of that, literature was then thought to be the best way to transmit texts and so forth. So when the time of Buddhism, when it came to Tibet, that was already the praxis in India. And what they received was an enormous, wealth of manuscripts, which came from India, were carried by panditas coming from the major universities of mostly, but also from other, yogis and masters and so forth, who carried their text along and brought them to Tibet to teach them there. So as a general idea. So within this cultural context, it was decided that a form of writing was needed that could be, suitable to put Tibetan language as it was at that time into writing. No, I say as it was at that time because by this I sort of justify the sometimes surprising structure of Tibetan words, Tibetan syllables. We will come back to that later on. In the sense that in Tibetan syllables, there is a lot of stuff that nowadays you don't read. No, most probably at that time the pronunciation was closer to the writing system, which is quite, terrifying, because Tibetan syllables, as they are constructed, are very often nearly impossible to pronounce if you want to pronounce everything. So let's say that, of course, the language that was standardized with that writing was a kind of abstraction, a kind of, let's say, standardization of the oral language that was prevalent at that time, but within a context of an enormous variety of linguistic, expression. You know that the Himalayan region is more or less big as Western Europe. It is approximately 4,200,000 square kilometers in size, which is enormous. And in particular, it is really a very desolated land. No, it is mostly a high plateau, a desert, a high plateau desert, with the biggest mountain range of the world to the south, like separating it from the Indian subcontinent. And it has a density of population that is just maybe 1 or 2 persons per square kilometer. That makes up, during history, it's difficult to say, but between 6-9 million people, which is really nobody, no? Especially compared to, let's say, India or China, where they nowadays are above like a billion people, no? So many thousands times that. So nowadays, the number is more or less the same. Obviously, there were periods in time in which the population was a little more, like around the imperial time in the last centuries of the first millennium, and then even a little less when there were wars and these kind of things. In any case, generally speaking, that is like the average population of Tibetan areas. This means that in such an environment, in such a enormous greatness of land, you have few people here in a village, maybe few hundred. Then you have 3 days, 4 days travel, another few hundred people, and so on and so forth. In some areas, a little more because there is a possibility to farm and so forth, but in others, even less than that. So this is the ideal environment for languages to diversify. Even though we can, even if we would like suppose that that originally, let's say, the Tibetan language or family of language was unified, it came from a common ancestor, so to say, no? If all the various dialects and languages were different variants of the same ancestor, a little bit like it happened in Europe with the Latin, for example, no? Latin was the language of the Romans. They went around all over Europe, and we have nowadays many Neo-Latin languages, such as Italian, Spanish, Portuguese, French, Romanian, and so forth. So even if we have that idea of a ancestor language of the Tibetan world, which probably is not necessarily true. No, it's kind of from where history or observation can go back. It already started very much fragmented, so to say. In any case, in the Himalayan areas, a lot of dialects formed. Some people have identified. Then it is difficult, obviously, to establish what is a different language and what is a different dialect. No, for example, that is very often linked to political reasons rather than to linguistic observation. For example, there are areas, I don't know, in Italy, like in the Northwest, in which the dialect is much more similar to French than to Italian. No, but it is still Italian dialect. Okay. You may even say that French is a dialect of Italian, which probably will have some people enraged. But obviously, it's not like that. But if there was a political unity in Latin Europe, let's say, maybe they would be called dialects and not languages. So some people have identified around 50 different languages and more than 200 different dialects in the Tibetan area. So basically, each Tibetan has his own language, more or less. No. Many languages just have a few speakers. And for this reason, also, by the way, they are, as dialect, particularly endangered. No? Because if you cannot communicate with anyone with your tongue, you are obliged to use other languages. No? For example, in the area that belongs to China, nowadays, Tibetans always will switch to Chinese to communicate among themselves because they do not understand their respective Tibetan language. Or in India, they will switch to English or Hindi or whatever language they learned when they were kids. So that is very endangering Tibetan language. Of course, this situation of very few speakers, political complicated situation, and the nature of the modern world, which is so much like online, no, and you have a dominance of dominant languages and a let's say regression of those languages which are not dominant. Tibetan is particularly in danger, not only the spoken but also the Dharma language, no? For reasons that maybe will be clearer later on. So coming back to this time when they formulated their writing system, obviously they decided that the model language would be the upper registers, no? Meaning the language common to the higher classes, let's say, nobles and families who had wealth and political power and so forth. And that language was taken as a base to abstract in the writing system something that could be then available to all. No? So they kind of took a picture of that, put it into writing, and used that as the medium for putting texts on paper, so to say. The idea behind that was not to write treatises or to testify agreements and so forth, but rather it was to transmit the Dharma. That was the central idea, probably the only idea, no? Initially at least. So the story goes that the emperor sent some intelligent people, how they identify, I don't know, some intelligent people to India to study Sanskrit, to study actually the languages of India. No, it is interesting to note that in Tibetan translation of Sanskrit text, it is mandatory nearly that initially you have to write, when it is a translation from Sanskrit, you have to write, Kyagar Kedu, meaning in Indian language, the title is. And then you say Kedu in Tibetan language, the title is. Okay? But they never said Sanskrit, which is called Lekdanling, but they say language of India. So the origin could be Sanskrit, sometimes it could be Pali, or other vernacular Indian language. Maybe even probably Odiana language. No? Here, many of us have heard about that. no? Odiana was a kind of semi-mythical or a land that was sometimes taken as a physical land, sometimes taken as a, metaphysical land, so to say. And it was the place of origin of the Tantras and of many teaching of Dzogchen and so forth. So Indian languages transcribed, so to say, in Tibetan. That was the central idea, no? And as we said yesterday morning many times by several people, the core idea was to represent, to adapt, to come to meet Tibetan speakers, to have the Dharma to come to Tibet and meet Tibetan speakers in their own language. Now that was the core idea for that. Yesterday, I think George said that the Buddha said that everyone should have the Dharma available in his own language. And by the way, in many teachings that are transmitted, it is said that the Buddha spoke, and everyone who heard him speak in his own language, no? Which is both interesting in actual and also in symbolical way. No? What is mean his own language, something that goes to his heart, no? That he can understand. So that is, I think, quite interesting. And in any case, the idea was that. So some instrument was required to pour the content of the teachings into Tibetan. That was obviously extremely complicated. We can still witness today how complicated that is with the effort to translate the Tibetan text, basically, or Sanskrit even, into Western languages. Maybe we come back to that later. And the emperor sent a few intelligent people to India, and I think it was a number. I don't remember exactly what the traditional history says, but I think it was 7 people, and only one survived, because obviously it's a perilous journey. We have several accounts of that. Like, for example, in the Vairodrabhag, there is a biography of Vimal Vairochana, who went to India and his travels and so forth. Very interesting, but they had, bandits and dacoits and eating things that, like today, no. made stomach problems and what else, or snowstorm and anything that can happen in these kind of very perilous travels. In any case, Tomy Sambot went to India, and according to tradition, he learned 365 by not a chance number, but 365 languages in India, different dialects and so forth. Why 365? What is 365? Yes, the days in a year, no? This is a symbolic number you will find in different instances for saying all, no? 365 is all possible, no? It's a circle in the year. By the way, also, if you like, the degrees in a circle are 360, no? Approximation of 365. Yeah. So that is the tradition. So he was extremely erudite in linguistic terms. And he came back to India and, according to some, adapted a previously existing writing system, maybe Shanshung, the ancient Bönpo kingdom of Western Tibet, or he formulated it according to or on the base of one of the many ancestors of the current Devanagari script in Sanskrit in India, no? Probably from the Brahmi variety. So, which is clearly, I think, even graphically, no, it is you can clearly see a relationship. Now, for example, our master Chogyal Namkhay Norbu said that there are different styles of writing in Tibetan culture, and that, for example, this one you see here is Wuchen, so-called, a scripture which has a head. I show you just a random page. You see, all the letters are kind of justified to a upper line, horizontal line, right? And I make it a little bit bigger. And you see there is some writing, and then there is a dot. Some writing and a dot. No? And this goes on and on. We will see later what that is. But that is a kind of feature of Tibetan. And but what I want to point out here is the upper line, no, that you can infer, sort of, that is made evident by these. Each letter has a adherence to this upper line, no, and that is this scripture is called Wuchen, whereas there are other scriptures. Maybe I have some examples in what I have opened. No, I don't have. I will maybe open later on. There are other styles of script that are called ume, or without a head. Wuchen means with head. Ume means without a head. And for example, according to our master, these had a different origin. No, so basically, the Wuchen was created, or was like an adaptation of Indian writing styles and ways and methods of a system originating from India to the Tibetan language. Whereas the Ume, the other writing system, was the, let's say, the employment of another pre-existing writing style to the new orthography of Tibetan language. No? So systems of different origin that kind of flowed together to produce a new coherent and identical writing system. The two, of course, represent the same language. No? Then there are also other styles. We maybe have later on also a sort of calligraphic excursus in this today's meeting. So Tomy Sambot wrote down, according to tradition, 8 treatises on Tibetan language. Now, this is also a little bit controversial, and I think, you know, we can reason a little bit and kind of exclude a few things that might pop up in this sense. So, generally speaking, in India and in South Asia, and in general in the world, grammar is understood to be a descriptive science, no? Something that describes how things work, no? Not a set of rules according to which people have to write, no? So language is natural, and that is acknowledged by these people who study it. And if you write a grammar, you describe a language. You do not say what people should do and what they should not. No, but obviously, doing so, you establish the core principle of a language. What is that? To be understandable. No, a grammatically correct text, for example, is a text that is understandable, that people who know that grammar and that language can understand. So you describe it, and from this description, people can understand, now I know what I should do in order to make my text understandable. No? That is, so to say, a description, and people then taking information from that description and applying it in their text. So this is very important. For example, in Western schools, no, education system, I don't know what you had the fortune or misfortune to attend when you were kids. Grammar is always taught as a rule, no, as if it was normative. No, grammar is what you should do. It is not an abstraction of the language, but a kind of superimposed rule set, which is obviously psychologically also from the children taken in a very different way, as it should be. Basically, grammar for kids is you see how you're talking. You see if that is understandable. Now I explain you why it is understandable. No, that is the way one should approach that in that perspective. Okay, so Tomy Sambot abstracted the ways of Tibetan language and like produced these 8 volumes on Tibetan language. So unfortunately, and this is very a great loss, to be honest, only 2 volumes survived. The remaining 6 volumes were lost already very early. So nowadays, grammarians, there is a very big tradition of grammatical studies in Tibet and in Tibetan. Generally speaking, grammar with the capital G, if you like, is the study of Sanskrit. No? Sanskrit is considered to be the language or the sacred language. Maybe we have time to touch upon that. But Tibetan was described by this Tomy Sambot as on the base of the Sanskrit grammar. So that is, he used the ideas of Sanskrit grammar description of the language to describe Tibetan. No, that is okay. You can do that. For example, in Western languages, no, we have many varieties, such as, for example, nowadays, or let's start from ancient times, Greek, ancient Greek, Latin, and so forth. They were described in a structure of grammatical cases, no? Nominative, genitive, dative, accusative, vocative, and so forth. Nowadays, this method of analyzing the language survives in some languages, such as Russian, German. No, they have their grammar structured on that, or their description of their language structured upon that base. Okay, so in German, for example, you have nominative case, accusative case, dative case, and so forth. So, but it's simply a way to describe the language. In Italian, for example, in the ancient time, they used this case structure, but then they moved to another kind of description. And it seems that now they move, every year they have a new description that is typically Italian. No. And so, or at least they change some particulars and aspects. So you had the description of Sanskrit language, and you use that description to describe how Tibetan works, how Tibetan is working. No? Obviously, that has some flaws because there are peculiarities that are specific and different from Sanskrit to Tibetan. In particular, the most evident one is that Sanskrit is a so-called Indo-European language, no? In which you have roots, nominal roots, from which you kind of adding some modification, you can produce a variety of concepts that all stem from the same core meaning. No, I can make an example for that might be like sort of that might be suggest how that works. For let's me. So we have the root. Let me make it a bit bigger. The root, generally speaking, roots are made up of consonantic parts. No? Consonants are the most fixed part of words. That is true in many languages, or maybe in all languages. So consonants in words are those elements that have a less tendency to change. The vowels instead change much easier. No, generally we have two sets of sound: consonants and vowels. We will come back to that later. But say MN is a root in Sanskrit language. MN gives, for example, the name Manu. Manu, you know who is the first human being according to Indian mythology, let's say. No, Manu is the first human, let's say. Actually, they were three brothers, but Manu, Yama, and Yami. Yama is the first dead. No, maybe you know Yama Antaka, for example. In any case, Manu stands for humanity, is a kind of the Adam, if you like, of South Asia. What is the main characteristic of humans? Manas, the mind. Manas is mind. No, is not something that comes from humans, but it is that of which humans participate. Okay, there are a lot of derivatives from this central root. By the way, Indo-European language, no, man, but also, no, human. So you see, this is a little bit very, very simple and, not very academic, let's say, representation of how roots work. No, all words are produced like that: nouns, verbs, adjectives, adverbs, whatever. So you can see what the criterion behind that is, and it is to have a central concept, a central idea, and then this like um, branches out into sub-ideas, into, let's say, specializations of that particular idea. No? So this is an extremely interesting field of knowledge. In India, we have a kind of mixture between symbolic etymology and actual etymology. No? So etymology is the study of the history of words. For example, an example of symbolic etymology is it's called nirukta in Sanskrit. For example, here, the syllables are analyzed in their own contribution to the word. No? Guru, I think you know, everyone knows. In nirukta etymology in India, one of the interpretation of this one is that gu is darkness, ru is light. And guru is the one who takes you from darkness to light. No, just as an example. This is true that they try to make true also in Tibetan. One of the ways to produce words that were able and fit to represent the Dharma in Tibetan was this one. No? See what the origin means, see what the core is, and try to reproduce that in Tibetan. Sometimes they had the tools to do that, meaning words that had a similar range of ideas which they represented. And sometimes they had to change things to rather interpret than translate. So, where is my pointer? Here. That is how they work, no? I was just reading the other day that, for example, in the mandatory dictionary, the Mahavyutpatti, the words are described like that, no? So, for example, mandala is made out of manda and la. Manda means this, la means that. So we translate that as chil kor in Tibetan. Chil means center, kor means surroundings, which represents that, more or less. And that is very interesting. And it is a field of study that brings you to remarkable depth, because it really grasps the core of the teaching. It takes your mind into a position by which you can really go to the core of the expression. And this is really the reason why I think for someone who has a relationship with the Tibetan Dharma or Tibetan teachings, it is really a tool for great progress to study the Tibetan language, to appreciate the incredible depth that is conveyed by Tibetan. So, coming back to the work by Tomy Sambot, what he did, actually the 2 volumes that survive, maybe we can have, no, maybe a few minutes more. I'm not very good at history, but I think it's the 8th century. 8th century. No. Well, Sambota is, his name was actually Tomy, or Tomy. Sambota is a Sanskrit word for saying a Tibetan. Bhota is generally how in Sanskrit Tibet is well known. It comes from Pe, which is the Tibetan name for Tibet. He was Tibetan, yes. that is also interesting. How is it that we call Tibet Tibet when it's called He? There is also some hypothesis about that. In any case, he described what survives of its works are 2 volumes, and that is interesting because he wrote those volumes in Tibetan, no? Supposedly a language that did not exist. So actually he wrote his treatises on Tibetan language were the first text in Tibetan language, written down in that way with that Tibetan in mind. These 2 treatises are basically rules of orthography. Orthography means correct writing, no? Ortho is correct, graphy is to write. So what you can place where? In a Tibetan, let's say, word for the time being. And there are 2 treatises. They are called Sumchupa and Takjuk. Sumchupa means the 30, and it refers to the 30 letters of Tibetan alphabet. And Takjuk means the addition of signs, so to say, or the placement of sounds. So what can go where in a Tibetan word? We will come back to that later. It is a thing of remarkable complexity, surprising complexity. And so I was saying Sanskrit is a language, Indo-European language. It works in similar ways as our languages here work. It is far more complex, it is far more precise than modern, particularly languages, but also old European languages. It is extremely precise. Samskrita means in Sanskrit means well organized. And in Tibetan, they translate that as lekjar, which means the same thing, well put together in a good way. No? And that is the name for that language. So you can imagine what the idea was. So, but Tibetan is a completely different language. It is, its source is a completely different world, let's say, which is probably the Central Asian, East Asian world, no? Like China, Mongolia, all that area over there. But it includes also, nowadays, languages included into that group are, for example, also Japanese, Korean, Thai, and all Burmese, Cambodian, and so forth. What do they have, these languages, as specific, peculiar core characteristics? That they are based on a single syllable. They are monosyllabic languages. Linguists these days classify Tibetan in the, I think a subgroup of Tibeto-Burmese languages, which is a closer family, belonging to the larger category of Sino-Tibetan language or Sino-Tibetan language, which also includes Chinese and other languages that are related. I'm not sure that Japanese actually belongs to that group. I think it's a side subgroup. So we said the peculiarity of this language is monosyllabics. What does it mean? It means that one single syllable that is a sound that has a beginning, one vowel only one vowel, and maybe something after the vowel, okay? It can be constituted, let's say, by a maximum of 3 elements. A vowel in the beginning, sorry, a consonant in the beginning, which can, in most cases, it is there, but sometimes it is absent. absent. There are words that start with a vowel. No, for example, ama. Ama means in dialect mother. No, ama. So it starts with the a. It's 2 syllables. So this consonant can be there, but must not be there. Then there is a vowel, which is only one. In all languages, the description of syllable is what goes around one vowel. No? And there can be another consonant in the end of that sound, of that syllable. Starts with the consonant, generally speaking. One vowel, final consonant. So let's see a few words that you might have heard. Dodge. No? Maybe you have heard that. Let me write it in, well, let us write it how you know it. So that is dor, no? Initial consonant, one vowel, final consonant. Then the next syllable. Oh, yeah, sorry. I forgot to say that the final consonant also can be absent. Anything can be absent aside from the vowel. J, you see, initial consonant, vowel. Here, the final consonant is absent. Doje. Doje, by the way, in Tibetan is the translation of Vajra, but it is not. Vajra most probably is referring to a bolt of lightning. And in Tibetan, Do means stone, and Je means noble. So noble stone. And it refers to the diamond, which is, if you like, a solidification of a bolt of lightning. So coming back to our structure, 2 syllables, no? Put together, you see, start to understand how it works. You have one syllable which brings one meaning. Another syllable which brings another meaning. Together, they mean another thing. No? So here is how we form words. And this way of the language is extremely deep, how it works. It is extremely productive to go and see what the syllables mean that constitute words, okay? So we will come back to that maybe as we go on many times. So the basic structure of the Tibetan language is one single syllable. Single syllable brings meaning. One, but unfortunately, 2, 3, 4, 5, 10, 15 meanings. One syllable can have many meanings in Tibetan. Maybe it's a bit cold here. I see. It was not because it's cold here, because you're going, okay. Yeah, okay. Ciao. Okay, I think we can have a short break, maybe 5, 7 minutes. And maybe we can pause our talking. And in the maybe some of you heard it in any case, but Julia was asking a question about let's say oral transmission that is called lung in Tibetan, about the importance of this lung and the, let's say, the doctrinal perspective about that, because according to Tibetan tradition, a text written down is just a memory support, so to say. But it needs to be put into life, into something that functions, that works through the breath, the voice, the person of the Lama, which needs to transmit it directly to the disciple. Okay, so a question was, so only in that way, so let's say the teaching are eminently oral, no? You will never find a Tibetan master in general that you go and you say, can you teach me this? And he gives you a book. No, you will never get that. This is in Western academic ways. He will give you at least the lung. Now he will read the text for you. Once he has read it for you, you can read it yourself. You can go into the meanings. But first of all, you need to have the transmission of the sound made through the life, the breath, the mental intention by the master to communicate to you the contents of that book, no, of that text. So another part of the question was what my opinion would be about the modern technology as an intermediary between the master and the disciple. No? So this, I think, can be sort of reasoned upon looking at what sound is. No, sound is vibration. So it is a vibration of air. No, that is why sound is energy. Also, that is why energy is called voice in Tibetan Buddhism. No, so if you like, from a certain point of view, a transmission is also a contact, physical contact between the mouth of the Lama and the ear of the disciple via air, the vibration of air. No, so for example, Chogyam Namkha Norbu used to consider that lungs given in a webcast or in a, let's say, Zoom, were in all effect correct. No, why? Because however that vibration, energy of the sound is translated on the way, maybe into digital, maybe via a phone or a radio or so, radio waves, no, whatever. However it is translated, it remains this vibration, this communication, this direct line. Even if it takes time to travel, it is still a direct contact. But a recording does not have that effect because there is not the intention of the master behind that. No, there is not his mind. If you play a recording like a year later, that effect is not there because you don't have a direct contact with the mind, with the master's intention and mind and knowledge and wisdom. No, so that I would say I would not. Yes, it has to be. Yes. Yes, the intentionality, the life, the energy force of the Lama is absent if it's recorded. No, it was there at the moment, but then it's gone. In my opinion, yes. I never heard any Lama to say that, okay, you listen to a recording of last year and you have the lung, you know? Even 10 minutes ago. As long as it was not, you know, continuously traveling from some part to another. So that's just a question. Okay. This said, we can go back to our topics here. And we were considering the main structural characteristic of Tibetan language, monosyllabics. No? Of these, there are two kinds. Syllables that carry meaning and syllables that only have a grammatical function. Okay? In fact, what is grammar? Grammar is the feature of language that communicates what the function of something in the sentence is. No? For example, a sentence is made by different elements and a verb. A verb must always be there for a sentence to work. Why? Because a verb, in the sense in which we understand verbs, including, for example, to be, the verb to be. No, this is beautiful. No, this flower is beautiful. Is a full sentence. But if you say this beautiful, it doesn't make sense. It is not a complete self sentence. No. So the verb is the element within the sentence that rules, that establishes how all other elements work. And the position and the relation to the verb that the various elements in a sentence have is established by grammar. No? For example, in English, if I say the king is born, no? The king is the subject, is the verb, or is born is actually a compound verb with the copula verb and the past participle. I think it is in English. Actually, it is a passive sentence. There is not much grammar there in English. No, there are no changes in the word king to tell you what is doing, what happens to the king. No? In Tibetan, you would add something, let's say, to each element in the sentence to say what it does there. No? For example, if you're doing the action, if he's receiving the action, if it's something upon which the action is made. Okay, and this is done, this signaling, this qualification of participants in a sentence is produced by a very tiny and but very strong and powerful group of syllables that are called, in general, they are called suffixes, grammatical suffixes. Okay, you add them to the end of something, and by that addition, you say this one is, for example, the element performing the action, or any other of the grammatical possibilities. So, two kinds of syllables, one really big can produce, can transmit meaning. What is the core idea of that? It is the mind, your mind has a knowledge about the syllable, hears the syllable, and the meaning is awakened, so to say. You can understand, you go to the meaning, no? In a way, a word is a symbol, is an intermediary between your mind and the element that is mentioned by the word. Now, if I say table, your mind produces the image table. You know what it is. No, you have direct, or at least you think you know, which is entirely another topic. In any case, um, in any case, um, the understanding Tibetan is made of understanding word and understanding grammar. In short, we can say that the study of Tibetan classical or Dharma Tibetan is the study of grammatical elements. No? By those, you know how that works. What the various elements in the sentence are doing. Okay. So let us come back briefly to more general consideration of the language that are also extremely interesting. So we said that this is Rinpoche's handwriting, Chogyal Namkha Norbu's handwriting. It is a book on. This is Juyik. I come back to that later. I didn't want to show you this one. I wanted to come back to that. Maybe this one. Yes, we can see here. And you see, this is a typical Tibetan text. Okay, maybe I use something more clear here. This one. This one is the maybe interesting, the so-called invocation of Samantabhadra, which I think some of you know. No? So you see here, this is a digital text. For that reason, it is clear. So it looks clear. I mean, you can easily figure out how things work. So let me go into this. Syllables are marked by this dot. You see, there is a piece of letters, let's say, one dot, another piece of letters, another dot. You see, the dot is called tsek, and the syllable is called tsek bar, which means between dots. No, bar is a syllable you know, even though you don't know that you know. Bar is in middle, intermediate. Bardo. No? Bardo. It means intermediate state. This is intermediate dot. So syllable is called tsek bar, between dots. Okay? So a syllable is defined, described visually in this system of writing by a dot where it starts and a dot where it ends. Then we have other separating elements. For example, this one in this case is a so-called tertsek. These two dots, two circles with a crescent moon in the middle, or even horizontal line, or even nothing between the two circles. It's called tsekbar. It means, it's called tertsek, which means terma. Yes, terma, a separator for terma. When you see this one, you know that this is a terma text. A terma text is a text which, according to tradition, has been taught by good Padmasambhava, written down by one of his disciples, and then hidden to be rediscovered by the rebirths of presumably one of the disciples that got the teaching. In some birth later, he rediscovered the text from where he had hidden it. This is the invocation of Samantabhadra, Kuntu Sampimelam. It is called the Mönlam Topoche, the aspiration invocation or aspirative invocation, which has tremendous power, great power. Okay, now you will maybe ask yourself, yes, okay, syllables, But words, you know how to separate a syllable from another syllable because you have a sake. But how to separate words, you don't have any hint for that in the writing system. When you read, you need to know where something starts and something else, where something ends and something else starts. No? For example, Nansi korde tamche kun. Nansi means the whole universe. I am going very fast. Korde means samsara and nirvana. Tamche means all, and kun means all. So it is the total, absolutely, of samsara and nirvana, which are appearance and existence. Okay, it is only you, the reader, who understands where a word starts and where words end. What goes together, what is separate. So this appears to be terribly complicated, terribly difficult, no? But surprisingly, it comes in a little automatically. Why? Oftentimes, because Tibetan text has a rhythm. Tibetan text is written down, and that is another incredible feature, incredible testimony of the great ability of Tibetan translators in particular, but of writers in general. But translators even more, because they have to obey to a text that they are translating. No? And they not only they are translating, but they are putting it into regular verse form with a regular number of syllables. The same Sanskrit. Sometimes when you translate to English, for these few syllables, you need 2 lines. No? But Tibetans, they were able to convey the Sanskrit original, which also was in verse with a number of syllables, into the exact same number of syllables, each verse. And this rhythm is helping you both to memorize, but also to separate words, to understand how it works. I'm not a very good, reciter, but I can try to show you how the rhythm goes, no? This is a verse very common in 7 syllables, you see? Each section has 7 syllables. You see, there is no aim to make somehow the meaning correspond to the rhythm, or to adapt the rhythm to the meaning. No, it is simply the rhythm that rules. Then your ability is to put your meanings within this, if you like, limitation or rhythm. But as I said, the rhythm is a wonderful tool for memorization. No, when you recite, you have a rhythm, and you instantly know you forget something or you add something. No, that is one of the ways, one of the reasons why it was possible for many centuries to keep text going in the same way by memory without writing down. No, and there were incredible mnemonic techniques to memorize text. For example, one is you memorize the first and the last syllable, and then you go backwards. It's incredible, but it works. Or the first line and the last line, and then you go ahead and backwards. And then you have the whole text in your memory. I'm completely lost in this and waste. But if you start from a small child to memorize text, then it will become natural. And nowadays in schools, I think they make a terrible mistake, which is devaluing memorization, no? Because memory is like a muscle. You can train it. You can train it a lot. You can become really good at that. And not because they think, you know, it's imposition, it's violence on the child, and they should only play in the dirt or something. But it is a real useful tool. What do they do in the Tibetan or Indian world? Children start memorizing things. No, they don't understand anything. They do not know what they memorize. Generally speaking, in Tibet, they memorize spelling of syllables. No, but maybe they don't know the meaning. But they memorize, and one day everything is there. They already know it. No, everything comes out. You remember, for example, Rinpoche said many times about the text. I don't know if it was the Chanchu Sempe Chopala Juppa, the Shantideva Bodhisattva Charyavatara, that he studied it, he memorized it, and he thought he didn't understand it. No, and then later on, when he heard some other teachings, it came to his mind. Oh, that is what that text was saying. No, so he had it in storage, so to say, and then it produced fruit. It came back to his awareness. So, for example, here, if we read, it is Nansin Korde Tamche Kun Shichi Lamye Drebu Ni Riktan Marig Chotulte Gundu Zambe Menlamki Ta Tamche Choyin Hotantu, and so forth. But you can identify, no, the rhythm. It's very useful to remember things. Again, this rhythm also helps you to sort out words, what's going on in the verse. And this also is a testimony to the great ability and proficiency of the ancient Lotsawas to translate these texts, to compose for the Tibetan authors. And yeah, this said, let's come briefly back to the topic that I touched earlier when I said, yes, this is the Uchen writing system with the head. No, it's a kind of capital letters, if you want to have an analogy that might help to see what happens. And we have other styles that are called ume. Here, that starts with this. This is a typical ume style. Ume is generally manuscript. It means that it is written by hand by some people specialized in that. Copyists, no? They spend their life copying manuscripts. And this is the format of a Tibetan text. No, it is sort of like panoramic, if you like, in format. No, it is way bigger in brightness. How you say, length, than in wide. It is wider than long, or than high. Sorry. And for each page, you have like 4, 5, 6 lines, maybe 9 sometimes in very dense texts, but I think that's rare. And the writing system goes from left to right, from top to below. No? So you read like similar to Western languages. And you see, this is the ume style, in which you cannot sort of see the top line to which the text is justified. No, the dots are not dots anymore, but they are these vertical short lines. No, that is how they represent in this writing. It is not particularly difficult to study because truly it is not that difficult, but you have to have a good writer. No, if it's a medical doctor writing, probably you won't read anything. Another one is this. No, this is the same style, and these are styles that are used very much for, particularly in the old school Nyingma, particularly for texts that are not designed for big, public, to be available everywhere. Okay, and also from smaller lineages, smaller less known, well-known masters, and so forth. Yes, you can figure out a few things, yes, but still it's quite different from that point of view. I don't think you can infer one from the other. No, that is, I think, quite a hard kind of endeavor. Yeah, that is the same. The writing, what is written and how it is written is exactly the same. Yes, I will show you something later. And this one, according to Rinpoche, for example, is a writing system that is different from, in origin, from the previous story that I told you, that Tomy Sambot, and he used the Indian script as an example to produce his way to write. This one apparently in his elaboration has a different and pre-Buddhist origin. So Bern, probably, yes, we're using this. Very oftentimes they also use this kind of writing. And another style is this one. This is a manuscript by Rinpoche himself. There is a text on grammar. You see the title is in Uchen, but this one is called Juyik, which means literally can be translated by cursive. No, cursive means fast, running script. No, and Juyik means exactly that, running letters. Juk means to run, to go fast. But this is not, according to him, a Ume style. It is the fast way to write Uchen. Yeah, it is a running script. No? It is also a little difficult to, this one I think is more difficult. He has even styles that are more running than this. Here you can kind of not so difficult to identify things. Although I think maybe this one is not really Juyik, but it is a form of actually fast handwritten Ume. No, yeah. For maybe later I find another one which is actually Juyik. I can show you Juyik in a computer form, and that is how you can learn. I mean, if you study Tibetan, I learned it this way using Tibetan fonts. No, so let us select a part of the text and let us change font. Now this is the same. It's exactly the same text, but with a different font, and Ume font. No? So for me, I learned this way of writing. I know the text and I see how they write it in this form. No, we also have Joyik. This is the cursive style. It's exactly the same text. Yeah, the font is very well done. It has some problems. Now, for example, here some. This one is difficult. I have difficulties to read this one, which is not, particularly. In any case, that's the same exact text as before. But if you are talking with a Tibetan and you ask him to write something down, they will use this one. If you ask them to write in this style, many people will have difficulties. Yes, they don't train this one. This one is for books. You don't write the book by hand, especially not these days. It's for them, it's the cursive or handwriting is like this for in the Tibetan world. Okay, so let's get back to books, if you like. One moment. So these are books that are manuscripts. They are handwritten. They do not have any other possibility in the pre-computer era to be written like that. But the words in the books in Uchen, like this one, I don't remember what this is, but I think yeah, it's a biography, which I'm helping a student to read or to translate. And you see, this is a block print text. Okay, so that one was the main way to reproduce different kinds of text in many copies. Okay, what happened? Apparently that came from China, they say, this technique. But I think Tibetans were very well able to also invent that independently. You have a piece of wood, no? A good, well, like planned, polished wooden slab or something. And you write a good, calligrapher writes the text on a piece of transparent paper. Okay, transparent paper. Yes, very thin, like rice paper or these kind of things. They had a lot of inventive that in those days, and or at least a paper that you can look through, or you can see the writing from the other side. Let's say. So he writes it like that. Then they turn it around and they glue it on this wood. No, then you have a number of other people who chisel away the part of wood that does not belong to the writing. No, so you take out that which is not to be printed. Of course, you can do it the other way around also, but that's rare. Okay, and it is interesting that not one person does one piece of wood. They are called xylographic matrix. Xylographic means xylo is wood, graphic means to write, and matrix means because it's a matrix for printing. Okay, so these matrix wood pieces, they were carved by a number of people sitting in a row, in which each one did a particular stroke on the whole page. You see that we will see maybe later on, letters are mostly composed by the same kinds of strokes in the writing. No, you have, like, for example, the horizontal top stroke. No, it's coming all the time. Here, 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 here. You see, it's the stroke that produces this impression of the top line. No, so you had one guy sitting there and doing all the top strokes. Then he passed it to the next, and he maybe did all the let's say this stroke is another one, looks like an open parenthesis, an open bracket. You can see it here, you can see it here, you can see it here, maybe. You can see several instances like here also in this one, no? And this guy would do all of those. So clearly no one understood anything about what was written there. No, and they didn't need to. Only sitting there. By the way, all of these things are practices. No? You, generally speaking, you sit there, you measure you have a knife, a chisel, and a hammer. No? And you measure with your breathing, with your mental attention, and so on and so forth. That is a practice. Writing down texts is a practice. Any activity basically is a practice, but this has the addition of accumulating merits. Okay, because disseminating the Buddha's word is accumulating practice, merits. So, mostly in monasteries, yes, the printeries were in monasteries. But obviously, it is expensive to do something like that. So it was done only for major text, Kanjur, Tenjur, no, the two sections of the canon, sutras, no, and so on and so forth. You had a spender, a donor. That is always how it happens with the teaching in Tibet. You have someone with money. He goes to a lama, he says, I offer you this, whatever. In ancient Tibet, they use gold powder, and you give this teaching. Or I sponsor the printing of this text. Your maybe sumbum, your complete works. No, I pay for that. I accumulate a lot of merit because I am the primary cause for that to happen. You do it, you also get merit, and so forth. So that is the way to purify one's karma and so forth. But that's not possible for all texts. So there were other techniques to multiply texts. For example, dictation. No, like several people would meet in a room. One lama reads the text and the other writes it down. Okay. In one reading of the text, you have maybe 10 copies, but you have 10 different copies because not everyone understands correctly. Not everyone knows the correct spelling. No, that is very interesting because by the analysis of mistakes, you can nowadays reconstruct the history of texts. No, so what was copied from what? Because there is the same mistake going on. No, obviously this is something for philologists and very, how you call it, like library mice? How you call it? Bookworms. Yeah, absolutely. But the challenges of Tibetan orthography are more than Western. When you do a dictation in Western languages, generally it is not really a problem how to write it down. In Tibetan, yes, because there are a big number, because it is a monosyllabic language. Let's come back to that. Syllables are limited in number. No, in Tibetan language, approximately, more or less, there is a book listing all possible Tibetan syllables. they are 4,035 in that book. Maybe he added some which are inexistent, or he took away some that exist. But that's the number, grosso modo. So 4,035 syllables, are, of which they maybe half are never used. That is, must be said. That number of syllables is not sufficient to produce all meanings, of course. Now we have more than, and maybe my dog or my cat has 2,300 meows in his head, but but we have more than that, no? So also from the point of view of sound, sounds are way less than 2,000 or 4,000, no? That means that you have different syllables that sound exactly the same, but are written differently and mean something else. I give you some example for that point. The syllable rik, maybe you know this one. It's the syllable of ripa. Rik, no? This one means, is a syllable that has a reference to knowledge, to knowing, in all of its possible ways, so to say, like science, no? Knowing this and that, knowing everything about this subject, rig, you know, but also a knowledge that is awareness, no? If you like, that's science. But you have another word that is written in this way. Maybe I give you also the Tibetan. Maybe there are some like this. This is the sound is exactly the same. Rig, 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 rig. This letter, the S, the final S, you don't pronounce at all. Maybe in ancient time they did. But nowadays, the two syllables are exactly homophonous. It's said they have the same sound. So this one means family. Family, or tribe, or family lineage, no? Rigna are the 5 families of Buddhas. The context. We will come back to that later. Another example is look, with the same variation. Look. Look. Look means tradition. This look means tradition. School, handing down things. Maybe you have heard the word in the name Geluk. Geluk. Geluk means virtuous tradition. It is with the ness in the end, if you like. Lug means sheep, which is not the same thing. It is not the virtuous sheep, Gelug. No. Well, it is its own ways, the ways of the Tibetan language. Oh, yes. Yeah. You have some words that have just a slight variant or sound the same and have different meanings. But see, yes, you see or the see, no? Yes. These are homophones, same sound, but different meanings, no? In English, for reasons unknown, you write them differently, no? English has a very irregular relation between writing and sound. Tibetan is pretty regular. Although it is not like sort of natural, it is regular. That means you have to learn what the composition of a syllable produces in terms of sound. But once you have learned it, it's always the same. No? It always corresponds. So you see, if a lama sits in a room with 10 calligraphers and says gelug, maybe some of those where they had a hangover or something, they didn't sleep well the previous night, and they forget an S. So there is a mistake, no? And it becomes a virtuous sheep. Generally speaking, then, we have people doing the review of the text, maybe, and they do some correction, okay? This is possible both in manuscripts where they maybe write, they have like a dotted line and they write the correct one, or in wood prints, there is the possibility to carve out a piece and substitute, no? So they cut a piece out and they put another in and glue it in, so you have a correction. So this is really the base of the enormous, and if we remember how many people there are in Tibet, it's really huge, book culture of Tibet. No, it is, for Tibetans, books are really the one of the most important products they can ever produce, no? And they have done so in huge numbers and in very, very high quality. At the moment, yes, but that is at all completely absent in traditional Tibet. Nowadays, it's easier because you have the technology to do books, and you have the digital way of the computer. No, for example, I tried sometimes to make Pecha format with the computer programs, no, but it's really complicated because it gives you as the possibility and a page like this, no, and make different formats is difficult. Even more difficult is to print them. Printers are made to print them, so they have to adapt, and they produce books in modern format. But you see, Tibetan books, we do not have anyone here. Yeah, so we can look at them. So the way how they work is that each page has the text written like this, no? And the other side of the folio is printed upside down, okay? So when you turn it this way, maybe you can see me also, this way, no? And it's correct, no? And the folia, the pages, are not connected in any way, no? They are loose pages. Oh, yeah. Oh, well, it is an English book, but in Tibetan format. So I can show you. Maybe you can see. No, it's upside down. I have the. I don't want to mix up the pages. Okay, so you can see, no, this is upside down, but if I turn it, it's correct. No, that means that it is always correct if I turn it this way. No, and you see, pages are loose. they are not relegated, how you say, bound together. This is done on purpose because texts are designed to be, when they are put in shelves, they are put in a cloth, no? And then there is a string to close it. And this keeps the pages together and also protects the book, no? And you put it in shelves, like very deep shelves. And when you are, texts are basically made for recitation, no? You remember, you put text to life. No one reads it in the mind in Tibetan world. You always recite texts. And that also produces merit, no? It is the same principle as the so-called prayer flags, no? They are in the wind, the text is spread out in the wind. The same happens when you speak. You bring the text alive into the wind. So when you recite text, you have it like this, no? And you have a stand, so to say, sort of, no? And you go like this. This, you read, when you finish the page, you just turn and it stays there. If it was bound, it would come back, no? So, and provided you don't have any wind in your room, which would, you know, also carry the pages around, you go on and pages stay there where they are. Also, sometimes books are really huge. You have, you know, maybe 10-kilo book. And one of the things that, one of the jobs monks do in particular, but lamas in general, lamas understood as practitioners, is to go in houses and recite texts, no? For example, you know the biography of Machila Brön, the Tibetan lady who formulated the Chö practice, no? The very famous Chö practice with the drum and the thigh bone, trumpet, and so forth, no? She, before she became a yogini, she was specialized in reading Prajna Paramita Sutra for people. And she became extremely famous because she could recite very clearly, but very fast. So she went into households. They had, you know, maybe something happened, no? Maybe animals died, someone's sick. They call in a specialist to read the sutra, to, you know, make things more auspicious, to send away negativities, and so on and so forth. So that's a job, no, for some lamas. So if you have to go around with these 10-kilo books on your horse, and or maybe even walking, it's a lot of things. So if you know they invite you to read a text, you take that text only, you leave the rest of the book at home, and you go with the parts, with the pages you have to read, no? So that's much easier. You still will see in Tibetan monasteries these days, when there is a teaching on something, people will arrive with typically the book is on the shoulder with their envelopes, which are partial sections of full volumes. So, as we still have a lot of time, so if you have questions also from online, please do not hesitate to ask. So, okay, this is a sort of introductory part. How is it that this writing system works? We go into a little more detail. It works with 30 consonants and 4 vowels, so to say, so-called. 30 consonants are, maybe we can call them consonants, but maybe we can also simplify things by saying 30 letters. Okay, so maybe I can even correct that here. Because these 30 signs, 30 letters, are the minimum bricks, the minimum constituents that form the whole of Tibetan writing system. No? With these 30, you can write the whole of the Tibetan language. Yes, these need to be memorized, even though it's maybe more nice to play in the dirt, like children do these days. Yes, these 30 letters represent sound. No, Tibetan language is based on sound. Okay. For example, other languages in the same family or the same group, large group of family of languages, such as Chinese, for example, are based on characters, no, graphic design. They have a link between a form, let's say, a shape produced by a written element, and independently from sound, that written element represents a meaning. No? So technically speaking, you can pronounce a Chinese character however you like. But if you see the character, that's the meaning. This is something that is an advantage for Chinese language, because also there you have a large variety of very differing dialects, but the writing system is universal. Incredibly, this happens, the same kind of thing happens with Tibetan as well. That means writing system is universal for all. Let's come back to this example here. Some speakers may pronounce this one Rik. Some may say Rik. Some may this one pronounce it Rigs, like in Western Tibet. Some Ladakh, for example, they tend to read many more of the constituents of a syllable than the Central Tibetans do. For that reason, scholars think that Western Tibetan is more faithful to Old Tibetan, like what was spoken at that time when it was codified. In any case, the writing system, whether you pronounce this one, Rig or Rigs, is universal for both. Now, this is a very simple example, but you see, you can even produce the Rig or Rug or Ru. Yes, you can say anything. The writing system is the same. No, texts are universal. That is also the greatness of the ideas that they had while they formulated this Dharma language, no, which is independent from the native speech of speakers, the native tongue of speech of speakers. No, one may read it in a way, the other in one way, the other one in another. Meaning is the same, text is the same. So now this table of, this is the traditional, which I show you here. Maybe I can make it as small that you can see the full thing in one page. This one is the traditional way in which from the beginning, the letters have been ordered. And it reflects the Indian model, the Sanskrit model. And it is if you like, a very modern, in linguistical terms, way to organize sounds. You see, we have 7.5 lines. You can see that. No? 1 line, 2 line, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.5 lines, and 4 columns. Okay? Now, the lines how you say it? In the lines, you have all sounds that are produced in the same place in the human organism, in the human phonogenic place. Phonogenic means place of production of sound. So, for example, here in the first line, we have all guttural sound, so-called, or velar sound, that are produced in the throat. No? All of these 4 sounds are variations of the same movement that you do for produce one of them. Okay? Just for example, this one is ka, ka. This one is the same sound with the addition of an aspiration. Ka, ka, ka. This one then is in low tone with slight aspiration. Ka. This I will come back later. This one is the corresponding nasal sound. Meaning that to produce that, you allow the air to go through the nose. And then you do the same movement as before. You open the throat. Nga. 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 You see? Same movement. So if you try ka, 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 nga. No? You will notice, and you pay attention to that, you will notice that you do 4 times the same exact movement. Tibetans describe the differences between these 4 sounds as differences in effort. Okay. Earlier I said that these letters are all consonants, let's say. That is not entirely true, to be honest. But at least the letters that you see above this black line, if you're interested, I can send you these materials. This is generally the handout that I use for beginners language courses. I can maybe show you how it works. There are different informations and the syllable, how it is constructed. And then we go into the grammar slowly, all the various possibilities. And then we arrive to words. Words, how they are formed. No, that is the very interesting part. And then we start with the grammar. And finally, we will have examples taken from a large variety of Tibetan texts. I can show you this one. No, I use colors to indicate what is what. Like green color is verb. Red color is a grammatical marker. So it's quite immediate to identify the various functions. No? This color, violet, is negation. Okay, so you can see how things work with a relatively easy impact. Okay, but in any case, that will concern only later if someone is interested in continuing. Let's come back to the consonant stuff. You see, when we speak, when we pronounce sounds that then turn out to have a meaning and thus to be a language, what we do is we articulate our breath, obliging it to go through restrictions. And by restricting the flow of your breath in some way or another, you produce sounds. No? If you keep everything open, it's just breath. No sounds come out, or just the sound of breath, which is. But that is already you add something to the breath. No? Yeah, that is, for example, the A sound is a vowel because it is produced by the vibration of the so-called vocal cords. Vocal cords are the organ in the human body which is used to produce vowels. When you say ah, you cause these vocal cords to vibrate, and by that you produce the sound ah. Okay, so it's not just breath, but it's the breath is caused to pass through these membranes which vibrate and add to that breath the sound ah. Okay, that is interesting. Ah, when you pronounce ah, aside from the vibration of the vocal cords, you have to open everything. No? Ah is a sound by which everything is most open. The throat is open, the mouth is open, the tongue is relaxed on the floor, the lips are open. So, a sound is considered to be the largest possibility to produce sound. It is all open. Other sounds, all other sounds are particularities or restrictions of that initial, as you said, Julia, primordial sound. A is the principle of all other sounds. Very much in the same way in which the white color is the principle of all other colors. No? You know colors, if you put white solar light through a prism, it will divide it into its constituents. No? So the various colors, or a thing that is red or yellow because it only reflects that peculiarity of white light and retains or absorbs all others. That's what makes it red or yellow. White light comes in, only that fraction of the circular, let's say, gamma of colors contained in white light, or in light, if you like, is given back. By the way, traditionally, I think, if you like, it is a mistake to talk about ultraviolet and infrared as light. They are not light because they are not visible. The gamma of colors or radiations of light, white light, is circular. Okay? Other things are other kind of rays. No. That's right. That's right. But it's not something that is object of the eye. you cannot see it. So that is interesting. In particular, if you have a vowel, no, everything is open. This traditionally in India and also in Tibet is life. Is alive, is the expression of the full potentiality of being alive. If you add a consonant, or if you pronounce a consonant, this is a negation of the A. It is a restriction. It is an opposite form. No? If you look, what you do with when you pronounce, for example, the first letter is ka, ka. What you do? You close everything. No? This is a restriction of the flow of air. These kind of consonants that are called in modern linguistic occlusive consonants, because they require a complete closure of the flow of air, they are considered to be dead or death. No? They oppose the life of the consonant. But since we are alive, each consonant must be, in order to exist, so to say, must be accompanied, if you like, by an A sound. All letters do include and imply an A sound, even though it is not written anywhere. You cannot find the A in the written form within any letter, any other letter. There is nothing that signals the presence of the A. So in a way, life is there, but it is not seen. No? It is like kind of the principle, but it is not manifest. So all letters must be pronounced with the A. Of course, you don't want to kill words. No? You cannot say, it's impossible. You have to say ka. This consonant supports itself and can exist only because it's the A that gives her life. No? This is truly the very reason why also in Western languages, in English, for example, they are called consonants, which means con, together, sonant, sounding together. They do not sound alone. No? They are called consonants. So they are closures of the oral tract. They negate, if you like, that closure. So there are two kinds of consonants. One is called occlusive, as we said. One is called, well, in addition to that, they are the nasal sound. One requires the total closure of the airflow, and one instead only requires a partial closure, and this partial closure produces a turbulence in the airflow that can be heard. For example, sh, s, r, l, these sounds. No? Nevertheless, they must be accompanied by an A because they are consonants. Okay. Nasals are peculiar because they also imply the use of the nose. No? So the sound, the air basically goes through the nose. This one in particular, the first one, nga, nga, nga. Then, here, these ones are single letters, but they are also words. that means something. For example, this one, ka, means mouth. Mouth in the human body, but it also refers to anything that is a place through which you change place. You go from one place to another. No, for example, also a door, a gate, and an opening of a cave. No, the cave has a mouth. I think that you can say in English, no, the mouth of the cave. So ka is an opening which separates two ambients, two places. Or another one is nga, the fourth letter. Important one means I, me, myself. Nga, one of the 24 ways to say I in Tibetan. I don't know 24, but there are many. What's that? Excuse me? Well, in the I is important, no? I think most probably I is the most important thing for everyone. And that's the problem. In any case, there are many ways to say it, no? And maybe we can refer to Finnish language in which there are 20 ways to say no. Tibetans have 20 ways to say I. And no, it is important, so it needs to be described. Well, I can give you a few. Some are rare, some are more common. One is nga. So maybe I can go first with the Tibetan, then another very often used one is da. Dag. One is another one is ko. Another one is rang. They all have different ways to be used. So the most common one is nga. We transcribe like that. Nga. That one is used also in modern colloquial. Or da. This is da. This one is interesting. It also means the Lord. Like, for example, the over sovereign of something. No, both, for example, you can refer that also to deities, for example. But it also means I. For example, a very common point in which it is represented is Dagshen. Well, I can write that in transcription only. Dagshen means I or myself, and Shen means others. So this is one of the ways to say all. But with the division that is kind of the background of your analytic mind or your idea of self. No, you divide instinctively the world in self and others. Okay, Dagshen is very common, but Dag means also the Lord. But because why? Because for each one, each being, I is the Lord. Is the most important being. No? In a way, if you like, but instinctively, what establishes you as a like transmigrating being is the idea of I. We call that, it is called Dagzin in Tibetan. dagzin, to cling, to grasp. Both zin is to grasp, and interestingly, it is to grasp in both meaning that can be used in English, to grasp with your hand, but also to grasp with your mind. No, you understand something, you grasp it. Same in Tibetan. You grasp an I with your mind, you insist that it exists. And you also cling to it figuratively, if you like, with all of your strength. You spend your life working for it. That's, by the way, the problem. That is the key for producing karma, no? And so on and so forth. So you see, there is a lot of, and this is another interesting topic. When are we supposed to? Wow. I was thinking that I was going too fast, too far. 1:10. I went like into wild. Sorry for that. I was noticing a slight dryness in my organs of production of sound.